Welcome to the Class Apart. I'm your host, Arjun. Thank you for joining me as I embark upon a journey across the world of higher education. Each episode, we'll discover exciting alumni experiences, gain industry insights with various stakeholders, and explore the ever-changing landscapes of global learning. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Class Apart. Over the last few episodes, I appreciate if you have tuned in. We've heard experiences of alumni of UK institutions, US institutions, and Singapore institutions. Further down the line, we will look at various other institutions around the world in various other countries. I've got Austria, New Zealand, Australia, France, and a couple of other countries on my list, so please do stay tuned. But I'd like to open this episode by saying Happy Diwali. As you can tell from the title, this is the Diwali special episode, and I'm very excited to bring to you someone who I feel is making waves in the education industry, very, very vocal on LinkedIn, and I read pretty much each and every post that he comes out with. Today's guest has been recently awarded Business World's 40 Under 40 in the realm of education. He has done his undergraduate from SRCC and his postgraduate MBA from IE Business School in Spain. So we'll be touching upon that a little bit as well. And currently he is the director at Anandmayee Memorial School in Raiwala, Uttarakhand. He has a couple of initiatives which I am really, really interested in talking about, which we will get to. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Mr. Arpit Panjwani. Arpit, how are you?
Very well, Arjun. Thank you so much for having me over. It's really a pleasure being here, discussing certain things that are very close to my heart. Thank you for having me on the Class Support platform, and happy Diwali to everybody. Hope you have a good and safe one. Thank you.
So I've just been following you on LinkedIn for quite a while now, and I'm a bit of a weird user when it comes to social media. I don't just like everything and I don't share everything that I feel, I'm not into all of that. If I like something, I genuinely do like it. And there are a couple of things that I've seen, some initiatives that you've posted about and some issues that you've posted about as well. And it's not only the positive, but you're also very critical of the education industry. So the first thing I'd just like to touch upon is congratulations, class 10 and 12 students are starting to return to school. Obviously, the COVID pandemic has probably made you change your modus operandi a little bit. So, I mean, how was that? How was the preparation in getting school ready?
Yeah, so it was a bit of an uphill task, to be honest. The government has released a very elaborative list of SOPs which schools have needing to be followed, which is mandated. And of course, in the list of SOPs, they also put that in case the schools are not following, they will levy the Epidemic Act against the schools which are not following those in particular. So we had to go through a detailed process. We had to set up committees which were, looking after the safety protocols, the transportation, the classroom arrangements. We need to maintain a basic 6 feet distance between each student and a desk. And then we need to follow certain protocols in terms of basic sanitization that needs to be followed day in, day out while the students are entering, exiting the classroom. Nobody is allowed to share tiffins. Nobody is allowed to really gather around or play any contact sports. And at this point of time, we're only allowed to hold 4, say what we call periods in the Indian education system, 4 classes a day. So we needed to prepare that and also arrive at a certain permutation and combination of which one we would really like to hold. And in such time, it's also been challenging to have educators back on campus because, as you can imagine, after eight months of lockdown, some of them have gone back to their hometowns, living away, some of them. And we also need to follow a blended learning approach now. So it's not compulsory for the students to come back to campus. If they want to attend from home, they have the choice of doing so. So we need to hold the same classes in sync with the students who are coming back to campus. The others who are not can view them from home itself. So which is a new challenge in itself for the teachers. So we need to arrange basic infrastructure and then also the training required so that teachers are adept at doing so. So it's been a learning experience. Students are slowly, gradually coming back to campus. I'm glad to see them back at school. But of course, I'm guessing it will take a while until all the students come back.
Do you ever feel that it'll go back to the way it was, or is blended learning here to stay?
It's definitely here to stay because across industries, I think everybody has realized the importance of working from home or being able to do their, routine jobs or basic requirements. So in that sense, we save a lot of commutation, logistics. The school itself, I feel, all the private schools have realized that they would save a lot of costs in calling people on campus and running the basic infrastructural facilities. So I feel in my case in particular, blended learning is here to stay, especially in terms of my junior classes, say up till grade 4 or 5. I don't feel I would want to do 6-day working anymore for them. I'm good to go with say 3 or 4, which we're still working and experimenting upon. Even when school reopens, goes back to normal, I think we will. And to be honest, we've discovered some great facilitators who needn't come to campus. They needn't come to Raiwala. Some of them can facilitate them sitting in the United States or thereabouts. A lot of them my own friends,
Yep.
which is how learning has improved or evolved over time. So yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much prepared. Even when we're allowed to call all the students on campus, we would not want to do 6-day working anymore.
Mhm.
And then besides, I feel like since we've been following this, a sort of project-based learning methodology, we would like to give them work which they can work on collaborate from home. They needn't come
Mhm.
to campus anymore. We'd save a lot of time commuting. And it's just about getting work done at the end of the day.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, from a school perspective, it definitely sounds like there was a lot of research involved as well before you could even think of opening schools. And to be very honest with you, I mean, obviously being a part of the education industry myself, I think it was about time. I'm really, really happy to hear that schools are opening. And I know that, I mean, both of us live and are from Dehradun. And we know a lot of schools in the area that are now opening. And I feel that that is a very, very positive step. I actually do
Absolutely.
feel, on a personal level, that schools should have been one of the priorities to open. But obviously, it comes with its own, as you mentioned, its own hurdles and its own issues. So I don't exactly know the details of how you would do something like that. So I just kind of want to rewind a little bit and focus on a little bit on your experience at IE Business School in Spain. Obviously, you're very, very outspoken about the great experience that you had over there. I've met you as well, and we have had a good conversation about what it was like to be a student in Spain. So, just from an overarching view, how was the experience? I mean, why did you choose IE Business School? And then after that, how was the experience actually being there?
Great. So to be honest, I chose IE pretty late in the day. It wasn't my foremost choice in terms of the unis I had shortlisted, but somehow I couldn't make it to the top ranked universities in the UK, and suddenly I landed up discovering that there's this unique program in Spain, which normally one does not associate with education per se. One would obviously associate Spain with a lot of partying and tourism and travel and culture per se. But then I went deep, I analyzed, and I realized there are two top ranked schools. When I mean top ranked, they were in the top 10 business schools
Hmm.
according to the FT rankings, and they had brilliant programs. And to my surprise, they also had programs which were entirely in English. So yeah, I mean, just to answer your question, it was a wonderful, immersive cultural experience because IE boasts about, say, a 92% geographical diversity. So only 8% of my cohort, say, comes from Spain or thereabouts or Spanish-speaking countries. The rest of them predominantly come from Asia, Southeast Asia, the Middle East, South America, LATAM, the works. So it was an eye-opening experience, which is what I went out for. I needed a course which was basically about 1 year. IE gave me about 11 months. So it
Hmm.
was just a no-brainer. I wanted to be back at work. And particularly about Spain, I mean, it gives you life-changing opportunities to go, travel, explore. IE is basically not just about going, attending classes, and indulging in cases or just working with your case mates. It gives you a lot of opportunities to indulge in extracurricular activities, also to participate in the clubs, which are especially the entrepreneurship club, which gave me a lot of exposure. And especially I had never imagined that a sport which is very dear to me, table tennis, could also help me travel so much and participate and meet newer people, because I established a new table tennis club, traveled to Barcelona, won a tournament there, played the MBAT at HEC Paris. That was a wonderful experience as well. So on a whole, yes, a great experience, but I continue to say this when a lot of people reach out to me. IE has its own drawbacks, especially in terms of the career services which the school needs to work on, and I'm guessing they're working on it proactively now.
Yep, yep. I mean, always. I mean, I faced a similar thing when I graduated and now I'm working and I look back on my experience as a student. There's always something more that can be done. Um,
Absolutely.
and I feel that I get a lot of requests as well from students and parents about XYZ options in XYZ universities. And each university, it's interesting to see how each university kind of prioritizes its curriculum or its career service or entrepreneurship. And uh, to be very honest, being on this side of the table now, it's quite inspirational about how educational institutions, schools, universities actually manage to operate. It's definitely not easy. I'd like to touch
Most certainly.
upon I'd like to touch upon your table tennis experience. As you mentioned, and I share similar sentiments because, as you mentioned, you traveled to Barcelona for tournaments, you competed against HEC Paris. When I was a student, I used to play squash, and I traveled to Birmingham, and I traveled to Sheffield, and I traveled to Lancaster as well in the UK. I never won, which is pretty sad, but just the experience of traveling and playing games
Right.
against random other people was excellent. I feel personally, and please let me know how you feel, that that is an extremely eye opening and educative experience in itself, just outside of the classroom.
Most certainly. So, I mean, to be honest, I chose IE because it gave me a sort of sense that my experiences and especially in terms of the career tracks that it offers me is really going to help me explore and perhaps explore synergies beyond my current workspace, which is education.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, the thing was IE is not academic intensive, to be honest. As much as I believe all business schools offer you that flexibility to pick courses by yourself, but in a sense you can of course miss a few lectures here and there. You can afford to do that. You can mix and match. You can choose your electives in such a way that you can probably vanish for an entire month at IE, and then you can come back and take up classes all over again. So just coming back to table tennis, I think I was never prepared for it. The only preparation I had was my own racket that I took from India, because I play with a certain specific rubber. But itself, I'd never imagined that Spain has so much to offer in terms of table tennis. Only thing at IE, I discovered it's an outdoor game. And in
Mhm.
India, we've never had an outdoor table tennis or ping pong experience because the ball itself is so light.
Yeah.
But of course, playing there, especially in the IE, circles, the outdoor game in our courtyard, in the business school was itself a learning experience, because IE is an university, it's just not a business school. So I was somehow playing with the undergrads from
Yeah.
various nationalities and probably learning about their experiences, why they turned up at IE when IE is not so well known or recognized for their undergrad programs. But yeah, in terms of the interests, passions, whatever you share, whether they are on the sports field or beyond it, such universities often give you the platforms that really get you to travel and of course explore and meet newer people. So little did I know that if I had known way back in India, and if IE had sort of promoted it so extensively before I went there, I would have planned it out much better to have played much more tournaments all over the place.
Mhm.
But once I went there, I got to know that I can set up a club of my own. A lot of people, especially from China, from Korea and thereabouts, were interested in the game because, I mean,
Yep.
they play that predominantly back home. It was easy to become friends with them, especially the Japanese, I would say. So we all formed a group and we used to travel together wherever we got a chance to play tournaments, whether it
Mhm.
was within Spain, closer by, or, I mean, some of the established tournaments which are actually conducted by business schools. So the MBAT is not just a HEC tournament. It
Mhm.
is a MBA tournament of all MBA schools all over the world. So I was playing with people from Kellogg's, from
Yeah.
Wharton, from Yale, from Harvard, and it was great. Like there was a whole congregation. And it's not like a table tennis tournament. We even play cricket over there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, little could one imagine that you could actually land up in Paris, I mean, not too far from the center of town, and end up playing cricket, tennis ball cricket thereabouts.
Mhm.
So, yeah, that was a great experience, which also now helps me back at work, because, it was amazing. And I do a lot of sports at my workplace. To
Mhm.
see how they could set up a tournament for, say, about 2,000 students on that campus, starting from their accommodation to meals, which are in different waves with the wristbands. Now, we normally associate wristbands with, nightclubs and so,
Yeah.
but over there, we had wristbands for, like, how you're going to collect your stuff, how you're going to go for your meals, and which sport you're particularly going to engage in. So the logistics, the management, everything was so stupendous that I mean, it's like a case study by itself,
Yeah.
an
Yeah.
outside classroom case study. So that was an amazing experience, and I'm glad I got the opportunity to do it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we both went to the same school and we both know the standard of sports that we have grown up around for a significant portion of our lives. For you at school, it was table tennis. I think for me, it was tennis. And another value add which I see, and you might have experienced it at IE, and I definitely experienced, is the way different countries and different people approach sports. So in travels and in communicating with people as well, I've met people from the USA, and high school sports in the USA is, I mean, it's almost like a career in itself. Like students at the age of 16, 17 can get scouted for huge NBA teams, for big, American football. I think it's NFL leagues. And over there, the sporting community is a lot more localized with high schools. And I think that that perspective and giving that kind of importance to sports, because it teaches you teamwork, it teaches you determination, it teaches you, it teaches you where your limit is. I mean, sometimes you're just going to fall down exhausted because you just can't take another step. And I think
Right,
sport is definitely a growth advocate, especially at the age of 15, 16.
right. Most certainly, and I guess you missed that part about sport being a great leveler.
Yeah,
I mean, it brings people from different geographies, cultures, income backgrounds, nationalities together, and you're competing just as on a level platform, just as anybody else. So you could
yeah,
just be a prince, but at the same time, on a sports field, you're just the same player. So yeah, like I do believe in the West, particularly in the United States. Of course, they scout young, they do all of that, which need to come into our Indian education system as well. Of course, a lot of marks for sports programs and Fit India programs that the government has been promoting. But I do believe, since I'm in the thick of things, that we need to incentivize sports a lot more so that
mhm,
sportsmen do not need to forsake their academic credentials at the same point. The
yep,
thing, the lacuna that I basically face at work is simply that most parents believe that a child, when goes into sports, he or she would not pass or would not really
mhm,
material. If the sports career does not materialize, then there's nothing to fall back on,
yep,
and it's a risk taking factor. But in the West, I don't think you're really assuming much of a risk, because sports has varied career options. So you needn't really become a sports person per se, but you could get into sports coaching, umpiring, you could get into sports management,
yep.
you could get
Physiotherapy.
into, yeah, physiotherapy in the works. And these are the career options that now need to evolve in India. When I
Mhm,
mean evolve in India, they need to become actual paying jobs,
mhm,
not just a fallback option, as a last case scenario. So yeah, I mean, I do believe that playing sports is not just about becoming a sportsman. At the end of the day, not everybody can end up playing cricket for India. The odds of donning the blue in India are literally, I mean, second to just Bollywood, I guess, per se.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean, honestly, when kids play sports, they don't need to have that pressure, and parents don't need to really put that sort of onus on them that you can't become a sports person or represent your country, because that's really not what sports is all about. I don't think I really ever aspired to play table tennis for India. The thing for me was I loved the game, and that's what motivated me,
yep,
even to continue playing in Spain. And I guess it obviously got me to meet a lot more people. It got me to discuss ideas. It got me to travel, and which is how one needs to look at sport. And beyond that, of course, it's good for fitness in any case.
yeah,
There is
yeah.
that's just a no-brainer.
Yeah, and I think sport also allowed me to create a growth mindset. If you're going to play sports and if you enjoy it the way we do, you always want to get better. So
Right.
eventually that will translate into your personal life as well. You want to be, I know, you want to be a better director. You want to be better at your job. You want to be better in at home. You want to just be a better individual and strive for that next level because of the foundation that sport has provided.
Yeah,
Um,
which is something I missed to add. Like, I used to play table tennis with a lot of Japanese people, and I actually, through table tennis, came to realize and come to terms with their work ethics. It's
yep,
second to none. I mean, those guys, beyond we're not playing competitive games, there's nothing to win at the end of the day. It's not a tournament, but the amount of work and emotion they put into that thing. I mean, the kind of honesty as well.
yep,
A Japanese person would not cheat at any cost, which is something I discovered with them at the table tennis table right across. Like, you would feel like the ball bounced at the other end, or there was not a leg caught, but the Japanese guy would call it with utmost honesty.
yep.
That's really something I picked up from them.
Definitely, definitely. Coming back to kind of your experience at IE Business School in Spain. I mean, Spain's not a predominantly English-speaking country. You did your high school in boarding school in Dehradun at Doon School, and then you moved to one of the most prestigious commerce colleges in India, SRCC. So from Doon to SRCC, and it's still in a local kind of environment. Obviously, Dehradun, Delhi, there is a difference, and you're from boarding school to an undergraduate degree. But then all of a sudden, kind of upping, moving to Spain, and obviously meeting so many peoples of different cultures, and it's just a completely different lifestyle. Did you face a culture shock?
So I wouldn't exactly call it a culture shock, but it's a world of a difference adapting to the educational system and lifestyle in Spain. Because I continue to say that our Indian education system is predominantly based on rote learning, marks oriented, examination oriented.
Mm-hmm.
But little but one no, I mean I would love to say this on public platform. You don't fail at a business school. Notwithstanding what you do, how many classes you attend, you ultimately do end up getting that degree, barring maybe 1% of the cases who've really messed up, screwed up in some way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
But by itself, they assume that you're grown up and mature enough to realize, having spent all that money to get there, what is important for you. So
Yep.
nobody's really going to call you up or remind you about you missing a lecture, or your attendance being low, or your class participation being low. And
Mm-hmm.
for me, to be honest, the greatest learning experience there was that there were marks for class participation and making value added comments in class. So a teacher, I mean, a professor does not walk into class in a business school expecting you to have read up or having done the due diligence or the study. They don't come there with a chalk and a marker or a duster. It's basically 5 minutes, 10 minutes of discussing a case study, and then it's up to the class to make it more interactive or
Yep.
engaging, sharing their own personal experiences
Mm-hmm.
from whichever sector. So someone's from banking, someone's from consultancy, someone's from petro, I'm from education, somebody comes from government services. So if you're discussing, say, a case of Apple or say Google, everybody brings in a varied perspective, and that 40 minutes is basically a discussion, and how they manage to overcome a certain scenario or certain pitfall or a certain downfall. So it's not like you have to come prepared with knowing the numbers or something of that sort. It's about knowing the background of the thing, and it's important to have come prepared. So within a week's time, I realized that my SRCC culture is not going to hold here. You
Yep.
know what I'm trying to say? That I can't really turn up to class without really having prepared anything. I can't turn up after having a hungover night, because it's really not going to help. I would rather just sleep, because
Yep.
if I have nothing to contribute, I would know nothing. And I'm
Yep.
not expected to take notes over there. I've just got to imbibe the learnings,
Yeah.
especially from what people are saying and contributing. And within a week, I discovered from my close team casemates that all of them come prepared and all of them come on time. So my India flexible time scale structure is not going to hold anyway. So you know what? I can't turn up late for meetings, and then obviously within a week's time we fixed on the rules, regulations. Anybody who's turning up late has to get food for the entire team.
Yeah.
The 8 of us discussing a case study. So all of that, what we call jugaad in India, that I'll somehow make my way through. Of course, I'll make my way through, but I'll end up learning nothing.
Yeah.
So which is not what I would call, say, a culture shock, but I'm glad I went through that learning experience of having understood that the culture, the work experience, and the ethics are very different, and people don't especially rely on the last minute preparation.
Mm-hmm.
But if of course I also imbibe that in Spain, people can just walk out of the exam room straight to a bar
Yeah.
and spend the entire evening at the bar. I also realized that people can get drunk at night and wake up in the morning and get drunk again, and still turn up to class as if nothing happened. So all in all, I mean, the cultures are different. When you sit across these people, you realize that everybody has a different lifestyle and ethics. In India, we
Mm-hmm.
really depend upon the last minute preparation and so and so. But abroad, I mean, on a majority, I felt like everybody likes to come prepared and contribute, because they understand that they've spent all that money and they want a return for it. They just don't get there. And I would say that about the Indians, a few of them who landed up over there had absolutely little idea of the purpose that really they had in mind of coming for such an
Mm-hmm.
expensive program. But for the other cultures, I felt, and the other nationalities, I felt like they had a fair bit of idea, and they had taken this decision after forsaking a lucrative career.
Yeah.
So I mean, essentially people do want to make something out of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, while SRCC has its own advantages, it does not get me that kind of exposure which I wanted, and that's how I'm glad I picked this experience.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It sounds like a pretty good experience. I'm actually researching about MBAs a lot recently. Just as a thought, like, would it be something that I'd be interested in? I don't even think I can say yes or no right now. Actually, right now I'll say no. An MBA is definitely not something that would interest me. I'm just very happy with what I'm doing. But eventually, you never know. I've still got a couple of years before I can think about it and kind of take it seriously. But it just sounds like you've had a really good experience, and it's definitely good to know these things.
Yeah, I
Now,
mean, yeah,
yeah,
sure,
please
go ahead, go
continue.
ahead. Yeah, so I mean, when people reach out to me, I just tell them, like, don't expect the MBA as a, say, a platform or a course which is really going to tell you something you already don't know,
Hmm.
and it's not really going to give you any gyan or knowledge which wasn't readily available, say, with you in the books behind you. It
Yeah.
is basically no form of self discovery or enlightenment. It's basically, I mean, a lot of people say if you want to change careers from, say, banking to consulting or something of that sort, an MBA would give you all of that. At the end of the day, I continue to tell people you got to know what you want from it. Like, you
Hmm.
got to have some things clear in your head, because you won't just suddenly land up over there and expect that the world is going to change
Yep.
upside down. It's not going to be that way. Of course, there are going to be experiences, you'll improve as a person, you're going to learn a lot of things, but in your head at that age when you're going to pursue an MBA, you've got to have certain things clear in your mind of what you want from it, and
Yep.
therefore you will enroll yourself into certain things which are really going to help you get there. So if that is changing your career line, of course the MBA can help you, but for that you've got to know that with clarity, and you got to take those courses. They won't automatically come to you. You got to bid for those courses, to be honest, like, and if you fail to bid for them and actually get those courses, then the MBA is not going to help you.
Yeah.
And if you want exposure, then you got to travel. So for me, my foremost goal was, say, exposure and independence, and learning about how to sustain myself by myself and be extremely independent when I be back home as well. And I think the MBA did that fairly well.
Yeah. Um, Kind of just pivoting the conversation a little bit. Considering your experience at IE Business School, I mean, you really did kind of, from the conversation, you can tell that you imbibed it, you kind of took it in your stride, you did the traveling, you did the communications in the classroom, you met people from cultures from all over the world. Being part of the education system in India and being the director of your own institution, how would you say, how has your experience in Spain kind of influenced the way you look at the Indian education system? And please feel free to point out positives you see in the education system here or even negatives. Um, yeah, it would just be good to see how you compared.
Yeah. So, yeah, of course, there are certain things which are great about the Indian education system, especially in terms of the moral values, the ethics. I mean, starting from when we do primary education in India, through the tales and the folklores, and through the sort of cultural vibe that we seek to establish through the programs, the inter-school, inter-house programs, or the assemblies we have. I did discover that in Spain, that is not usual. In Spain, they don't have a school assembly system. They do not have basically any sort of Spanish cultural influence in their education at school. While in India, we take a lot of pride in our ancient cultural heritage
Mhm.
and different perspectives. So that is great about the education system. But overall, a lot of it is flawed, which is now being corrected through the new education policy after a
Mhm.
gap of, say, about 3 decades. We continue to rely on rote learning, which means, like, as I said before, which means that we continue to chalk and talk, we continue to preach, and we expect students to mug up everything and obviously answer all of that in basic formative or summative examinations at the end of the year, or say in blocks of 4 exams, which are unit tests, half yearlies, and annual examinations. And great educators continue to say that we focus on teaching and not on learning. So, I mean, educators continue to give you all that gyan, notwithstanding whether a child has really learned something or practiced that.
Yeah.
What we need to have now is application of that learning. What would the child do with, say, learning determinants or matrices, learning marketing, learning, say,
Hmm.
anything to do with accountancy. And kids need to apply that knowledge to create ideas, products, prototypes, with the knowledge that they've gained in the classroom.
Hmm.
So for instance, I sat with a professor of mine, and he was teaching me entrepreneurship mindset, and I discussed, this is what I do back at home. And he was from the United States. He used to come down especially for a fortnight to teach that particular subject, and we could book a one-to-one session. And I said, prof, this is what I do back home. I feel like, okay, a lot of things are happening, God's been kind, but I wanted to do something different. So he said, of course, within your classroom you continue to teach all the subjects that are mandated, but do you actually teach children how to do it? Like, how to. So we've got project work, like, in the ICSE curriculum, kids need to make a project, but that project would mean going onto Google, getting a lot of information. Making a project means introduction, bibliography,
Yep.
contents, writing down 10 pages, submitting them, getting those 20, 20 out of 20, 18 or 19. But I felt like, is the kid actually learning? So I got down to actually exploring that, can I not connect that basic syllabus which we are studying to sort of a concept called experiential learning or project based learning. So when we do all these events at school, they can actually become a learning experience. If we're studying marketing and if we're studying accountancy, can we not get kids to set up, say, a Dasera carnival by themselves, dividing them in groups of, say, 5 or 6 each in a classroom, and which is what I ended up doing last year. I'm just giving you an example. So 5 or 6 students together worked on, say, a customer discovery sort of research program, to say, we're going to set up 10 stalls for our carnival. These are my commerce and account students, for example. And we're going to set that up. We're going to decide based on, customer feedback from the rest of the school, what all things they want to buy, what all stalls they want, what is going to be the ideal price point, how much investment needs to be done, what is going to go into setting up those ingredients or requirements for that particular game or the eatables,
Yep.
and besides, like, what profit they want to have. So the entire class went through this process, worked with the commerce accounts teacher, I was involved too. And I believe this is what gave them a little bit of entrepreneurial mindset with a problem solving
Yeah.
approach, like, and
Problem
then slowly,
solving,
gradually,
budgeting.
yeah. Absolutely. So we study all of this in books, but I guess the Indian education system does not ever emphasize how to actually do it. And even the project works that we've been emphasized in the curriculum, they don't actually make you do experientially. They
Yep.
don't actually make you do the process. Which is what, if you got to study the stock market, I normally tell children, why don't you notionally buy stock and track it on a day-to-day basis? That's how you're going to learn.
Yeah.
So this is something I got to learn from my professor. He just said, go back home, run through the curriculum, sit with your teachers, ask them how you can actually make kids do it and make them
Mhm.
do it. Don't worry about the marks, don't worry about the exams. They will come at the end of the day. What my job is going to be, and of course, I started relying on technology for it.
Yep.
I mean, one of our labs in school where kids actually make mobile platforms or they make games through which they actually, I mean, seek to spread awareness in a way. I
Mhm.
mean, they uphold the sustainable development goals, and of course, it's sort of inclined in the curriculum as well. They actually do what is written in the textbooks or what is really part of the curriculum, and that's how they learn experientially.
Yeah. 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 I absolutely agree. Just I mean, there was one experience I had which actually kind of blew my mind in the realm of vocational training. So, vocational studies has been a topic of, do we do it? Do we not do it? It's just been a topic across the world. And unfortunately, it's not picked up to the way it could. But I went for a university visit last year to the UK. And the university that I visited, their mechanical engineering department, the students were building their own car which runs off renewable sources of energy, so it's completely environmentally friendly. And it was a one-seater race car, and at the end of the year they got to race that car against other universities that are doing the exact same thing. So the finance department got involved. So students of finance got involved for budgeting. The mechanical engineering department made the kind of, structure of the car. Then the electronical engineering department came and made the, infrastructure and made the renewable source of energy and all of that. And I thought that was cool. At the end of the day, instead of just sitting and learning and reading a book on how you make a car, go out there and make one. So I
Yeah, I
thought
mean,
that was
yeah. Absolutely 100% agreed with you, and I'll share what I ended up doing, considering I saw something like this. So during my MBA, I of course visited Germany over Semana Santa, which is the Easter break, about 15 days,
Hmm.
and I of course have known that Germany is quite forward in technology, and having certain batchmates and friends in Germany, they recommended me to the right places. I ended up going to the BMW Vault on a Sunday morning. And besides, of course, seeing fancy cars, I saw a bunch of kids over there.
Yeah.
And BMW has this practice of having an open day on Sunday, having kids turn up with their parents. They give them all sorts of kits, materials,
Hmm.
design tools to develop their own car. And there were kids, little children sitting over there, sort of drawing, painting, of course, assembling car with materials and all that. And then, of course, I ended up speaking to a lot of people, realizing that BMW actually ends up making their designs based on the feedback these kids give. I mean, the kids don't necessarily know about thermodynamics and stuff like that, but of course they can make great designs because they don't have that restricted mindset. They can think out of the box, they can be very creative, and they can just make extraordinary, unthinkable designs, which human beings, like at your age and my age as well, we tend to doubt, and
Yep.
kids don't have that doubt in their mind. So of course BMW has that practice. And then I came back, and when I started indulging in technology, I felt like, we need to give kids an opportunity to do something like that. So I organized on Children's Day last year something called an inter-school robo race competition. So kids needed to make a robot, which meant like a sort of motor-driven car, which can easily get assembled in a physics lab or a science lab, a remote-controlled car. So they needed to, of course, make that in a given set of budget, and they needed to make it pass through a given circuit. So we had made a complicated circuit with its own roadblocks and sort of inclines and stuff like that. So that not only, of course, taught students to how to use technology in the right way, but of course make that car in the given budget that we had assigned, and also to explain. So that took care of, say, I think all four C's, which we talk about: creativity, communication, collaboration, and things like that. So these are the kind of projects which I feel, and the initiatives that schools must take up, because they give kids an opportunity to not only develop competitive spirit, but also sort of use that application. I mean, use the sort of knowledge that they've gained studying physics of
Yep.
how the motor mechanics works, actually having developed that car and made it in a specific format. I mean, according to the rules or regulation, because they weren't allowed to use Lego kits.
Yeah.
That just spoils the competition per se. That's just, I mean, it comes pre-developed. And also sticking to a budget, and explaining how they stuck to a budget and how their car is different from the rest of them.
Hmm. Hmm. Definitely. Talking about one of the initiatives in your school, and this one, I have a lot of respect for this initiative. I've always wanted to talk to you a little bit more in depth about it, so I'm going to take that opportunity now. At your school, I recently saw a post on LinkedIn that you have started an equality club. I just kind of want to touch on. I mean, I feel that that is probably one of the best things I've read in 2020. Let's be honest, 2020 has not exactly been a year where you read about a lot of good things. It's mostly been negative. But this was definitely one thing that stood out to me. I think I liked it. I commented as well, respect. I just wanted to understand what was the thought process going into creating such a club, and how do you actually teach the students about equality and the various other aspects that it involves.
Yeah. So we established the Equality Club with the Young Leaders Council through Oxfam. So
Hmm.
Oxfam is an international organization. They've recently started setting up these clubs in schools and NGOs in India, and I felt like they have a nice curriculum, and they have their mindset, as well as the approach in place, so that we can actually facilitate equality in the true spirit. So
Hmm.
when I say this, they actually made us, including all the major stakeholders in school, go through a process to understand that equality does not necessarily just mean in terms of having the right sex ratio in school. That
Hmm.
need not just be equality. It means equality of voice, equality of opinion, and equality of opportunity in all different forms. So we set up this club, and then student leaders and volunteers were made to go through a process where they, of course, were also made to understand that whether the school is organizing a certain activity, whether the school is, hosting a certain event, whether you're participating in a certain this thing, you need to have gone through a thorough process and due diligence to understand whether everybody was ensured to the opportunity being made available, was informed appropriately, and giving everybody a voice or opinion in understanding what it was all about. So there are
Mm-hmm.
tons of these processes which we have in every organization, starting from, say, recruitment, starting from representation from leadership councils in school, to, say, participation in events. We sort of underestimate that we might be forsaking the equality aspect, because we seem to, personally, I seem to have always been regarding merit. But in
Yep.
some cases, it's not always just about merit. Like, in a certain sense, having a different perspective from a different gender also holds its own value in the larger scheme of things. So we sort of started incorporating all of that. It's been recent since we set it up. It's just a 3-month old club right now.
Mm-hmm.
We've had 3 meetings and a lot of different opinions and viewpoints which I never imagined before this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, especially when we seem to involve more girls in sports now. So we have a girls team for every sport. But when we involve girls in different councils, there are different sorts of ideas which come from students themselves, which we sort of tend to undermine.
Yep.
And because of that, and also in terms of the staff members, like, I'm a strong advocate of gender equality in all respects. So making sure that there is a congenial environment in the office space, on the sports ground, in the classrooms,
Mm-hmm.
for everybody. And that's not just in terms of numbers. I've always had the numbers in place, but that is in terms of having their participation in everything.
Yep.
Like, making sure that their different perspective is heard of. And even if it's just that one girl, we've always had an alumni association, but we started in and little did I realize until now that the alumni association is predominantly all guys.
Mm-hmm.
And when we started having girls more, we started holding better activities, we started having more participation.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I believe, like, every organization must sort of incorporate, when I'm saying gender equality, not just in terms of numbers, that I have
Yeah.
200 guys and 200 girls, boys and girls, or males and females. That won't work unless until the females are really participating in your
Mm-hmm.
workforce.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. And I really just, I feel that the concept of the Equality Club, to be honest, it should just be done across the country, across the world, to be honest. I think it's definitely one of the best initiatives that I have seen. And I think it's very, very important as well because, I mean, personally, as a guy, like things like empathy and compassion, I'm not gonna lie, it doesn't really come naturally to me. It's not something that I'm strong at. I'm working on it, but how I am working on it with the help of, you know, the other females in my life. My mother helps me with empathy and compassion. I've got a lot of friends that help me, and I just feel that there is a lot to learn from each other. As long as you give each other equal opportunity to showcase those skills and those kind of
Absolutely.
assets that you have.
Absolutely.
Now,
And
when
and
someone,
also,
yep,
no, go ahead.
no, I'm just like when someone doesn't have that opportunity to show themselves or to shine, it's quite upsetting, to be very honest. I mean, it's just not something that you want.
And to be honest, like, I mean, of course, before we set up the Equality Club, I also did one webinar, which was a very widely received webinar on the boys' locker room controversy in some premier
Mm-hmm.
schools in Delhi.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's
Yep.
something like that which happened, and I thought I need to address this immediately and nip it in the bud. So sometimes I feel like in the adolescence or in their primary years, boys do not know the hardships that women really go through in our country.
Yeah.
We really
Yeah.
seek to undermine that. And for me, I'm still continuing to come to terms with it. I mean, somewhere down the line, each one of us, no matter how empathetic you are, can obviously do better to understand that that women land up at work with a lot more hardships than you and I
Mm-hmm.
do. That girls come to school with a lot more hardships and a lot more convincing and a lot more sort of, how do I say, especially in my environment, it takes a lot for parents to send their girls, because I deal with an underserved audience. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure at that level, at the grassroots, boys are still priority.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, but like, I mean, if we continue to sort of still give girls that little bit of, I won't say more importance, but that empathetic treatment,
Yeah.
to make them realize, it just breeds a little more positivity and confidence in the entire environment. And
Yeah.
I've seen it change in the last 3 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Respect for that. And talking about the audience that you catered to at your school, I remember, please correct me if I'm wrong, this is quite a while ago during the beginning of the kind of COVID lockdown and things like that. There was a big debate in India, especially about online learning and access to resources so that people can actually access online learning. I mean, let's be honest, for me and for you, having access to the internet and having access to kind of laptops and phones where we can learn, it's
Hmm.
not exactly, impossible, but for a lot of people it is a bit tougher to gain access. And I saw that you collaborated with a store which enabled you to assist students, I think, in gaining access to those devices which they would need to continue their learning. Would you like to
Right.
elaborate on that one a little bit?
Most certainly, most certainly. And I'm still running through it. I mean, the challenges are immense, because at the end of the day, it's hard to imagine that every student in our country has a smartphone or has a tablet or a device to access online or virtual learning. So we ended up doing a survey right in the beginning of the lockdown, and we came to terms with the fact that only 30% of our students really have access to classes. So it's
Mhm.
easier said than done that we're holding online classes, but for whom? Because, I mean, we can do it amongst each other and for maybe the 20-25%, but at the end of the day, if children don't log in, where is the learning, and who are
Yeah.
we doing it for? So essentially, I started doing a crowdfunding campaign by myself, having realized that, this is not going to work out. Besides, children have limited data. Even till date, our surveys show that our kids basically get about 1.5 GB a day, which you and I really don't need to worry about.
Yeah.
We have seamless access to the internet, and God's been fortunate. I mean, God's been really kind, and we've been fortunate to have all of that. But and once the lockdown got lifted, it became worse, because the parents have their own smartphones and they were going to work,
Yep.
and kids really didn't have as much access. And over time, when we were doing 4 classes a day, we realized that kids were only logging into 3 of them. The fourth one, for no fault of their own, they couldn't, because the parent was either going out of their house or they were running out of the data. So I collaborated with this store called Meena Bazaar in Delhi, which incidentally belongs to a cousin of mine. And he read my post about collecting secondhand devices. A lot of
Mhm.
people have been very kind to donate their secondhand devices, which, I mean, some of them spoiled devices which we could afford to get repaired, and some spare devices. So we started distributing them amongst the kids. And my cousin said, he's an Amazon influencer. And I didn't even know what an Amazon influencer program is.
Yeah.
So each time you purchase something on Amazon through his link, which is a specific link, and you can purchase
Mhm.
anything which you would normally want to purchase, but it has to come through his link. He gets a certain commission, because they seem to assume that he's influenced that purchase, which in
Mhm.
reality may not be the case.
Yeah.
But considering Amazon continues to believe that he's influenced that purchase, so they give him a sort of commission in return for that purchase, which he started helping me redeem, and by purchasing secondhand, oh sorry, by purchasing any devices available on Amazon. So yeah, I got about 20 odd devices through that program, which is still good enough, because a lot of my kids come from families. I mean, a lot of siblings study in my school.
Mhm.
So when we give one device, it need not necessarily just mean to one child. It could probably mean for
Yep.
two children, or at least three children in some cases, which also meant, like, so we had access to the G Suite, which means that all the classes are recorded in our G Suite panel. So if the
Mhm.
child could not attend the class live during the morning hours, then you can easily tune into it during the evening hours.
Mhm.
And as they say, something's better than nothing.
Absolutely.
And yeah, like when you started, you mentioned that, it's easy to hold online classes, notwithstanding how good, or what is the end result in terms of learning outcomes. But at the end of the day, if the child does not have any access, then learning outcomes are much later.
Mhm.
The learning, how to assess that, and how to hold assessments or whatever programs are much later. Project work comes much later. First and foremost is how to reach out to the child, even if the school is trying to do it through WhatsApp, and some of the children genuinely do not have access to any of it. And
Mhm.
then besides, some of my students, considering the audience I'm catering to, were stuck up in the hills in Kedarnath or Badrinath. They have very little network, and it's only since the last maybe month or so that we finally been able to reach out to them.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, I mean, that's again, see, that's a whole other thing that again I just didn't have any understanding about, because obviously I don't interact with school students that much. But just bringing access to them, I mean, I think that initiative is quite commendable. And if there are any school leaders or any educational influencers that do tune into this podcast, I definitely think that this is an opportunity to be explored. Arpit, sorry, we're piggybacking off your idea, but I just feel that it is definitely one that's worth
No
exploring
worry,
and
no worry.
initiating
To be honest,
nationwide.
though, I picked up the idea myself from Teach for India. I realized that they're doing it, and I felt like this is basically a no-brainer. Everybody should be doing it. I read it on their social media, and I felt like if they could do it, it's just a second-hand device. Anybody in this country or abroad could be donating me a device.
Hmm. Hmm. Now, I think this is the final question that I have, and considering that, I mean, at the same time, and I kind of respect the fact that while you do see the pros of the education system and the potential of what it can be, you are also quite critical about stuff that can be done better. And I think having that kind of viewpoint is very important, because it's not always rainbows and butterflies. It's, sometimes there are things that go wrong. One thing which I would love to just pick your brain on is, recently it was announced that one of the best colleges in India requires a 100% kind of score in class 12 to gain acceptance. Now, coming from personal experience, I'm never going to be able to achieve that. I'm not going to lie. I wasn't academically, like in the 100%. It was never going to happen. Like, let's just put it that way. How do you feel about cutoffs being so high?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it's mind-boggling for me too, because I mean, although I did end up getting a good 95% in my grade 12, I wouldn't have made it to my alma mater today if I applied to SRCC, because they seem to be wanting a 99%, and even if I do my math, my averages are pretty good. But where do I really get the leverage to give away that 1%? That 1% basically means 5 marks, because English plus 4,
Yeah.
and that 5 marks would essentially mean like, okay, I can get a 95% in English, and the rest of the subjects I need to get 100.
Hmm.
Just
Hmm.
bit of mathematics. So yeah, it somehow troubles me that even after so many years of premier education, higher education in India, because some of these schools you're talking about, some of these colleges are not new anymore. They have
Yeah.
fantastic professors, fantastic educators, great authors, some of them leading big companies, especially I can talk about an SRCC, with a great management, a great principal, but they don't seem to realize even today that marks is not the be all and end all of gauging a child's potential.
Hmm.
And some of these, recent universities, Ashoka University in particular, that I admire today, where they've shifted focus on, say, marks. Because the importance of marks is not just going to get forsaken in a jiffy. It's
Yeah.
going to take time. With that, you need to understand the child's potential, like, I mean, what can the child contribute to this cohort or this program, which is how the foreign universities operate, to be honest. I mean, IE Business School, I can talk about. I was part of the admissions committee later on because I wanted to discover how it works so I can incorporate it back home. It's a
Hmm.
mix of your GMAT score with your essays, then your interviews, and then of course your recommendations.
Yeah.
You get the idea. So it's a mix of maybe 4 or 5 different things that contribute to your entire persona, and just your grade 12 marks need not determine what potential you have, or how you can contribute to the program.
Yeah.
So and it's a whole classroom experience. So if I'm pursuing BCom honors, or if I'm doing econ honors at SRCC, and the fact that I've got 100% need not necessarily determine that I can hold enough value to the class, or I am really of that caliber or potential. So we
Hmm.
need to have a holistic perspective to the admission system in India. It's about time. Although, to be honest, like I said, I come from the space where I really got those marks. But if I have to go and change it, I would say, pick somebody who has got the marks, maybe a 90%, but can really contribute to the college, can add a different experience or different diversity. You need, because when you're sitting in that classroom, you need a good mix.
Yeah.
You just don't need nerds in that classroom. That's not going to help, and I've already done it. So I'm giving you a an honest account of having been inside that classroom.
Hmm.
Some of those people in that classroom, to be honest, with all due respect to them, only had the marks and nothing else.
Yep.
And that's not something which futuristically is going to help you sustain, or really is going to, marks don't determine that you're really going to change the future of this planet, or conquer summits, or create some milestones which nobody else could, because they help you get in so far. But after that, it's about your own generic mindset, your intelligence, and your personality. And unfortunately, some of these colleges just don't take that into perspective. And it is my humble request that it's about time now. All of you know a lot more about, career development, about pedagogical development, about gauging IQ and things like that. Put different ways, and put certain things which are also followed by the industry in general. Because after college, when recruiters come to campus in SRCC, and I used to head the placement cell, recruiters don't ask for your marks. I mean, they have a basic cutoff in place here, 60%, but they would not ask for your marks. They would do a basic screening. They would do a thorough assessment in
Mhm.
terms of, a lot of companies have their psychometric assessments and all that in place. And then it's about your group discussions and your interviews and your perspectives in place. So put what the industry warrants, rather than follow what was being followed from the archaic times.
Mhm. Absolutely. Anyhow, I'm afraid we are out of time. So just to all of the listeners, thank you for tuning into the episode. I really, really hope you enjoyed the conversation that I had with Mr. Arpit Panjwani, director of Ma Anandmayee Memorial School. If you did enjoy the content, please hit that subscribe button. Please hit that share button, like button. Just click all the buttons, basically. The podcast will be available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and any of your other listening platforms. You probably already know that, considering that you've listened to the entire episode. But Arpit, thank you for joining me. I really had a great conversation with you, and keep doing what you're doing, man. I mean, I really respect the initiatives that you're doing at the school, and I'll be following you on LinkedIn very closely.
Thank you very much, Arjun. Really a pleasure being here. I hope you enjoy listening to the podcast. And as Arjun said, keep tuning in. There are some great conversations that he's been doing. And just in the end, happy Diwali to all of you. And please stay safe and take care of yourselves.
All right. Thank you. Yep. Stay safe and stay healthy, and happy Diwali. Thank you, everyone.